take a look at Perik Yud Tes Pasuk Tes 19:9 on page 6. Well, you know what? Let's just first start. Let's start on 656, just the first pasuk of Kedoshim, to get an idea why it's called Kedoshim. Page 656, top of the page. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor. Hashem says to Moshe the following, 656. Vaydaber Hashem el Moshe Lemor. Daber el kol hadas b'nei Yisrael. Speak to the people. V'amarta aleihim. Say to the people, Kedoshim tihiyu. Be holy. Ki kadosh ani Hashem lokecha. For I am holy, Hashem, I Hashem your God. For holy, he translates for holy am I. The wording here is a little, in Hebrew it plays a little differently, but I am holy, I Hashem your God am holy. Now, take a look at Rashi here. It's the second Rashi in the right column. The second Rashi in the right column. Kedoshim tihiyu. What does it mean if I say to you, be holy? You say to me, wow, that's a holy Jew. And what do you mean? We use the word all the time, right? Again, I don't know if holy is the best translation. We'll use that because we have no other translation. Say, ooh, that's one holy Jew. What do you think of, without looking inside, what do you think of when you think of the word holiness? Separation from non-holiness. Good. That's a very good definition. That's a very good definition. Holiness is separation from unholy. What do you consider unholy? Well, that we know. You know when you see it. That's good. That's also a good definition. Is it holy or unholy? Well, we'll know it when we see it. You know, then I can tell you. You know, there are things in life that are like that. By the way, you know it when you see it, right? It doesn't even have good. So that's exactly the definition. Take a look at Rashi. Kedoshim tiyu. Hevu prushib min ha'arayos. Separate yourself from immorality. Umin ha'avera, and from sin. It's the third line of Rashi. Shekol mokom shata motze geder erva, where you find a fence against immorality. Ata motze kedusha, you find holiness. You know, they always make fun of the religious world. So many separations. You know, the men and the women are completely segregated in schools and in buses and in shuls, and everybody makes fun of it. But at the end of the day, if I would ask you, okay, where do you find the Kedusha? Do you find the Kedusha in Mea Shearim or in Tel Aviv? In Dizengoff in Tel Aviv, what would you say? Or downtown Jerusalem on Yom HaAtzmaut, what would you say? Where's the Kedusha? If you didn't, you don't know. Okay, you don't know. Good. Now I'm going to put a gun to your head and tell you you're going to have to lay down a wager. You have to bet. It's not acceptable. It's not acceptable not to bet. What would you then do? Oh, you still don't know, huh? You still don't know. But I put a gun to your head. You'll die for the cause and not bet? No, you'll bet. You'll take a guess. You'll take a healthy, educated guess. Depends what?
Depends who's putting the gun to your head.
Put the gun. I was somebody who's very holy. So there are certain things in life I don't know. You don't know. Would you like to make an educated guess? Oh, you can't even guess, huh? You can't even guess. Oh, I see. You mean the club in Tel Aviv is Kedusha? Okay, that's possible. Your frat house in the college campus was Kedusha, right? Okay. Most people would say I think not. Most people would say, okay, so I'll tell you what I think. You could free to disagree with me or agree or disagree, but I'm right. Kedusha is where you find separation. The Torah says Kedusha is where you find separation from immorality, and obviously in the religious community there is very strong. It doesn't mean we're perfect. It doesn't mean people don't have flaws. The Torah itself says don't commit bestiality, don't be homosexual, don't commit homosexuality, don't commit adultery. The Torah says it. The Torah is talking to people who usually don't, but could. We never claimed you can't, otherwise we wouldn't need a Torah. Then we'd be malachim, and we wouldn't need a Torah. So the Torah is talking about people who could, but they try not to. So immorality is something that people inherently sense. There's a sense of shame with immorality that goes with immorality. Society has done their best to try to remove it, but there's still the concept of parental guidance needed. Before certain movies, parental guidance needed. I'm only talking about immorality, not violence, before we get to violence. Parental guidance is needed. That means your parents, adults are allowed to be immoral. I mean, why do you need parental guidance? You don't need parental guidance for a Disney movie. Why do you need parental guidance for immorality? The answer is because we all sense that it's probably not something we should be watching, and better that my kids shouldn't see it. For us, it's okay because we're such a high madrega. But for my kids, the kids better they shouldn't see it. Everybody said there's a sense of shame. All pornographic magazines you had to be 18 and over to buy them, or 21 and over, whatever it was, or grease the guy behind the counter, whatever it was that you had to do. There's always a sense of hiding immorality. There's a sense of shame that goes with it. Because we understand inherently there's a problem with it. And even society at large recognizes the idea, whatever marriage is, that area of human life needs some sort of official stamp of approval before getting involved. And if you don't, then what you're doing is a bit sketchy, right? Otherwise, what's wrong with it? So the Torah recognizes that Kedusha is the opposite of that. Kedusha is self-control in this area. And Kedoshim is not only in this area, Kedoshim means in all areas. Kedoshim to you, the Gemara says on this pasuk, Kadesh atzbecha bamuter lach. You should make yourself holy even in that which is permissible. Not only the things which are forbidden. Of course you shouldn't be involved in that which is forbidden. Even that which is permissible, a person should make himself kadosh. How? By exercising self-control. That's what the entire Torah is about. So something's permissible. You have a $20 all-you-can-eat kosher buffet, one of these restaurants. Right? I like to eat as much as the next guy. Right? Kosher buffet, $20 all you can eat. Most of us would take no prisoners. Let's go. That's not kedusha. It's not nevera. You didn't eat treif. But it's gluttony with Torah approval. That's the opposite of kedusha. And that applies in all areas of life. It could apply in the type of car you buy. It could apply to the type of house you buy. It could apply to the type way you eat your food. It could apply to the relationship a man has with his wife. Well, as long as everything is permissible, he may as well indulge as much as possible. Says the Torah, Kedoshim to you. Try to exercise self-control even in the permissible areas. Because if you can control yourself in the permissible areas, you're certainly not going to go over into the forbidden areas. I'm already working on the permissible areas of self-control. My son was a mashgiach in a hotel in the United States for Pesach, a kosher hotel, very upscale, a very high level meaning gelt clientele. I mean, people paid $4,500 a piece for the week, including in Nevada, including the what do you call it? Including children. No, these were people. He overheard one conversation. A guy said to the other guy, "I flew in on my private plane. Did you fly in on yours?" He goes, "No, they wanted to charge me for the parking all week. I didn't want to feel like paying for the parking." That's the Jew in him coming out, because this is a guy who could afford to buy the entire parking lot and company behind it. But the Jew in you says, "Well, I'm not paying for that. I don't care. We'll walk. I'm not flying in if I got to pay for parking." That just shows he's Jewish. That was the check. A guy can bring a private plane. He doesn't want to pay for the parking all week. Right? So that's the type of clientele. It's some very big hitters there. I know some of the people that were there. Extremely big hitters. So my son was when I called him the first time, I said, "What's going on?" And remember, my son's essentially an Israeli. He speaks English fluently, but he's essentially an Israeli mind. He's been in the Israeli yeshivas his whole life, and it's really the first time as an adult he's gone to America. So I called him up the first time. I said, "Lolly, what's going on over there?" He goes, "Daddy, 4 things: food, and more food." And he said, he indulged. He had a good time, but he said one of the black ladies said to him, one of the workers over there, she said to him at one point, she said, "Can I ask you a question, Rabbi? Do all Jews eat so much?" It's essentially an eat-a-thon. So my son is, he said to her, "Well, Jews have very big souls." Because I've been in hotels. I know what it's like. So he says you finish breakfast, and they have a snack room, a tea room, a snack room. You fill up, then you go to lunch. He said there was every type of salmon you could possibly imagine, and then some were served for lunch. And then you went to the swimming pool, and there was a barbecue at the swimming pool, a meat barbecue. And then when you finished it, then you went to supper for the real meal. And there's a 24-hour tea room and cake room and this room and that room and everywhere. He said everywhere you went, you're surrounded by food. It was all indulgence. Now, I got no problem with people enjoying themselves, having a good time. You paid for it, you deserve it. Whatever it is, I have no problem with it. We have enough limitations and restrictions in life to not be able to enjoy a little bit that way. But there's a difference between indulging, the difference between enjoying and destroying. Yahoo! Like a yeshiva guy at a $20 all you can eat, that type of thing. All right, so there's a difference between, that's Kedoshim. That's the difference between, there's a joy. We could enjoy ourselves. The food was there for us to enjoy. Shabbos is the same thing. Every Shabbos, we go through this every week. You've been at Shabbos meals. The table is practically groaning under the load of what a Jewish housewife puts out there. Right? And people are, okay, that's part of the honor of Shabbos, that we show that we are feasting on Shabbos. But there's a difference between eating and enjoying. I had a Rabbi who once told us, eat up your cholent on Shabbos. Don't eat up your Shabbos in the cholent. Right? So that means, you could eat your cholent and have a second helping and even a third helping. But there's sometimes where, you go into what I call a cholent-induced coma. You punish the cholent. You punish the cholent and then get horizontal for about 6 hours with no signs of life other than a minimal heartbeat. That's about it. And then next thing, so that's not. What's that?
The term for that is a slang term, but it's called itis.
Itis. Mm-hmm. What, for nothing happening?
Like a food-induced coma.
Oh, food-induced coma, cholentitis, right? And that's exactly what that's exactly what it is. So again, I like to eat like the next guy, but there's a certain level. That's what Kedoshim is. That's what Kedusha is. That's what Kedusha is. And when you look at the religious world, you see that we have so few of the problems. See, even in the non-religious Torah world, whether secular Jews or whether non-Jews, most non-Jews, if you got them in a moment of truth, and you say to a guy who's 40 years old, you have an 18-year-old, 20-year-old daughter on a college campus. Would you mind if your daughter behaves the same way as the girls behaved with you when you were in college? Most guys would say, I'd rather not. Now that I'm a little older, I understand. As we get older, we always tell the younger generation not to do exactly what we did, even though we were told by the older generation not to do it, and we did it anyway. Then when we get old, then we tell them, don't do that, kid. Listen to me. Well, Dad, listen. You didn't listen when you were told, so I'm not going to listen to you when I was told. So most people in a moment of truth understand that there's something inappropriate about it, and therefore the sense of shame. Okay, again, society has done everything they possibly could to shatter that sense of shame, and it's basically a shameless society. But it is there, deep down inside, or sometimes not so deep inside, that still exists. That's the idea of Kedusha. Okay, in the religious world, you see the separation and and sometimes you see the purity of the society, and that's where it comes from. It comes from the separation and the segregation in this area. Now, take a look at Perik Yud Tes Pasuk Tes. This is a fascinating section over here. There are many different many different mitzvahs in Parshas Kedoshim, and it says like this. It's in the middle of page 658. 5 lines from the top. Uvekutzrechem es kitzir archetzachem. When do you harvest your fields and your land? You see where I have 5 lines from the top. Lo sechale pe'as sadecha liktzor. Do not cut the corner of the field. This is the famous thing, the famous gift that you must leave for the poor called peah. Peah. Peah is when you harvest your field, you have to leave a section standing grain that the poor people can then go into the field and take. V'leket kitzircha lo silaket. Leket refers to the grain that falls as you're harvesting it. There are different categories. There's leket, there's shikha. Shikha is what you forget from the word shochech, but you forget in the field. You have to leave that for the poor people. Peah, which is the corner of the field, you have to leave that for the poor. And then it says like this: V'char mechalosa olel uperet kar mechalosa laket. Your vineyard also, you have to leave these things. Le'ani v'lager tazovosam, for the poor man and the convert, you must leave them. The assumption being that a convert does not have the infrastructure family infrastructure, and in many cases may be poor and destitute, coming over to the Jewish religion without any sort of backing. So chances are he's going to be poor. Ani Hashem Elokeichem, I am Hashem your God. Why does it say Ani Hashem Elokeichem? We know Hashem is our God. Why does it gives this command? And then it says, I am Hashem, Ani Hashem Elokeichem. I am Hashem your God. Why?
You know who you're up against.
Well, you know you're up against. If you don't think, I see what you're doing over there. So, well, I didn't really drop it, and there's nobody to deceive. You may deceive the poor person, but, I'm watching you. I'm watching you, and more than that, if you do it, I'll pay. I'm the one who's going to pay you back. Okay? Now, what's going on here? What's going on? Why does the Torah do this? We have all sorts of things you got to give to the poor. To a Kohen, you got to give Truma and Meiser, and to the Levi. And the poor man, you go out to your field, it comes out to be about, I think I calculated once, you give away close to 20% of your field after you give all the tax. It's like a 20% or 15% tax on your field by the time you give everything away. Why does the Torah say to do this? A very important insight into how the Torah is structured, how a Jewish society is structured. You see, it's bad enough being poor. The worst thing about being poor is you have to take handouts. You're a poor person, and you have to suffer the indignities. People have to give you tzedakah, and to receive it. The Gemara says a person who receives money, he turns the colors of the rainbow. The Gemara names a certain type of bird that has a lot of colors. Perhaps it's a peacock, I don't know. It's a very colorful bird. You can see all the colors of the rainbow in the face of a person who's got the shame of having to take freebies. So the Torah says, you know what? We have a system over here that as much as possible is going to maintain the dignity of the poor man. Poor man doesn't own any real estate, doesn't own any fields, he's got no agriculture production to support him. He comes to your field. Okay, Isaac, when do we start the harvest? And Isaac says, what do you mean, we? Isaac's the farmer, and the poor guy comes, okay, Isaac, when are we starting the harvest today? Well, who are you? What do you mean, we? What do you mean, what do you mean? What do you mean, what do you mean? I want the leket, the shikha, the pay. I got a busy schedule. Let's go, boss. I got to be at other fields today. Come on, when are we starting? And what you have to do is you have to actually leave the corner of the field for the poor man. So the commentaries point out this is a dignified way of poor people being able to receive. That the poor man feels that part of the field is as much mine as the rest of the field is yours. I'm entitled to that. Why are you entitled to the rest of the field? Because it's yours. What made it yours? The law. What law? The Torah. You bought it, you acquired it, you inherited it, whatever it is that made it yours. What makes it yours? How does something become yours? Why is it yours? It's yours because you received it. Who says, I don't play by the laws of inheritance? Yes, you do, because you're a Torah Jew, and that's the halacha. If a father dies, leaves the field to his son, the son owns the field. How do you know? Because the Torah says so. The same Torah says that you can't cut the end of the field, and you have to leave it for the poor people. Now, the Torah does not give a set amount that you have to leave. Rabbinic law came along and said in order that people really should, hey, maybe that's where it comes from, cut corners. Maybe that's where the expression to cut corners comes from. But that people really shouldn't, because by Torah law, you can leave 2 standing grains. You can leave a couple of standing grains over there in the field, and that's it. Rabbinic law, and the reason Torah law is like that, because the assumption was most people wouldn't do that. But with the descent of the spiritual level of various generations, comes along the Torah. The Torah says, you know what? The rabbinic law says, let's get a standard over here in the field. Anybody know what it is? What percent do you have to leave in the quarter? 10%. No, 10% is Meiser. Meiser is 10%. You have to leave, rabbinic law says 2%. There's a range between a 50th, a 40th, and a 60th. I think that comes out between 1.5% and 2.5%. Is a 40th 1.5%? I think it's something like that, between 1.5% and 2.5% of the field. If you're an average person, 2%, the 50th of your field. If you're a generous person, 2.5%. If you're stingy, 1.5%, rock bottom minimum. Rabbinic law.
What happens if you want to give 4%?
You could. But you could give, there's a whole discussion how much you can make your entire field pay it if you really want. But on the assumption that most people aren't going to do that, you could give. They're telling you what you're required to do if you are a generous person. I want to be a generous person. You want to be, if you give 2.5%, you're considered a generous person. So when somebody calls me about a shidduch, and says, well, do you know Scott? I say, yeah, Scott's a generous guy. Really, I gave 2.5% in this field. That puts you in the official category of being generous. Right? You're an average guy. You're a very fine average guy. 2%. Yeah, he's a little bit on the Jewish side. 1.5%. A little bit stingy. That's 1.5%. Okay, but that's the rabbinic range.
Is it similar to my song? Like the average person gives 10%, but you're allowed to give up to 20%.
Good. So there, yes, yeah, but there's a strict limitation. When it comes to your actual money, you're not allowed to give more than 20% according to halacha. You can't give. Unless you're very wealthy, which happens to all of us soon. Somebody once said to me, how wealthy do you have to be? I said, I don't know, but that is the one halachic shaila I would like to have to ask. I would like to know if I am in the category of being able to give more than 20%. That is, I'm waiting one day to be able to ask that question. Am I in the category of being able to give you, I'll fly my private plane over to the rabbi's house to ask him. Am I in the category, but I won't pay for parking? I will not pay for parking, but I will fly it over, and call. That is the one halachic question I would love to ask. Am I in the category of wealthy people who do not have to be limited by 20%? Yeah, but in the field, the halacha is that you actually could give more. But again, the assumption is that most people are not going to. It could be even that halacha, and I've never researched it responsibly.
2.5% isn't a lot, though, at all.
Depends how big it is. If you have like 400 acres.
No, but if you have like 400 million pounds, you still have to give the...
Right. Depending on how much you have, depending on how much you take a field. Remember, that's not the only thing you're giving away.
50 pounds, you still have to give 5 pounds.
That's not the only thing you're giving. That's not the only thing you're giving away, because then as you harvest, that's only on what's not harvested. Then when you do harvest, there's grain that falls. And once you bundle up the grain, there are different stages of farming. There's the harvest, and after the harvest, you come back and you make bundles in the fields. Then you come back and you collect the bundles. During the collection process of those bundles, if you walk a certain amount past the bundle because you forgot it, you have to leave it there. That's shikha. Can't take it. It's the only mitzvah, to the best of my knowledge, it's the only mitzvah you could only fulfill unintentionally. It's the only mitzvah in the Torah that can be fulfilled unintentionally. Because if you leave it there intentionally, that's not shikha. That's hefker. That's tzedakah. But it's not the category of shikha. You can't there's no deception over here. If you pretend to walk past it so that the poor person sees, oh, good, and you go, oh, gewalt, I forgot it, to maintain dignity for the poor man, that's great. You get a tremendous mitzvah. You get the mitzvah of tzedakah. You did not fulfill the mitzvah of shikha because you didn't really forget it. It's not like the sort of thing you can psych out. You can't fake forgetting it. Either you forgot it or you didn't forget it. But now the Torah says, if you did forget it, don't go back. That's up to you. Ani Hashem Elokeichem. Now you're going to have to be honest. Did I or didn't I? And there's nobody there to judge it except you. There's nobody. Did I forget it or I intentionally walked past it with intent to go back for it? There's nobody there. There's nobody there inside that little head except you. Right? That's where we're being held. That's where we're being held to the test. Okay? That's the what do you call it? Now, look at the very next pasuk. The very next pasuk, pasuk Yud Aleph. Lo tignovu, don't steal. In the Ten Commandments, when it says lo signov, that's referring to kidnapping. It's a capital offense. That's referring to kidnapping. This lo tignovu is financial. Don't steal. V'lo seshachachashu, don't deny. V'lo seshakru ish b'amido, don't lie. V'lo sishavu ish sheker, don't swear falsely. V'yu desecrate Hashem's name. Now, you see, over here the Torah says don't steal. And again, why do you think the Torah puts it right here?
Because if you took more, like didn't leave a corner, that would count as stealing.
And why would the Torah have to warn you about that specifically? Right here. I mean, you're on the right. You're right. Why does the Torah warn you about that here? I mean, Jews aren't thieves. I mean, any Jew rob a bank? You think Rabbi Zweig is going to rob a bank? I mean, you think I'm going to rob a bank? Rabbi Samet's going to rob a bank? Do you think I'm going to shoplift at this stage of life? I mean, honestly, come on, guys. I can take it. Hit me with your best shot. Yeah, I'm not a thief. So why does the Torah tell you over here?
It's unguarded. Because you're not going to think that you're a thief.
That's right. We may not be thieves, but we are master rationalizers. Master rationalizers. The Torah doesn't have to say don't rob banks. I'm not going to rob a bank. I'm too chicken to rob a bank. I wouldn't even try. Maybe a little bit of, maybe some income tax geschäft, but to rob a bank, I haven't got the guts. All right, a little bit to take advantage here and there, cut some corn. That's more Jewish crime. But to go in and rob a bank with a gun, that just isn't me. It just isn't. So now I got a field. I see a whole line of poor guys are waiting there. Bunch of loafers, get a job. I've been working out in this field. I'm in the hot sun, morning time. You guys are just waiting there. Hey, Cap, what time do we start the harvest? Hey, guys, get a life. What? I gotta go leave part of the field for these clowns over here. Yeah, I'll do them a favor. I'll motivate them to get jobs. I won't leave anything in my field. I'll do a mitzvah. You understand where we got to just now? The most dangerous evil inclination, Yetzer hara of all. I'll do a mitzvah. I won't leave you to pay.
You know what they can do though? They can put a sign up saying looking for a worker.
You could, but you still got to leave the pay.
Yeah, you can put
To provide some, no, not on the pay. You can't. No. It says openly in the Mishnah you can't do that. It says if you have your son following you, and he picks up to the contrary, they're not allowed. You cannot pay wages with this stuff. This is not yours. It's not yours. You're stealing if you take it. And therefore the Torah says, don't steal. Because if ever I'm tempted, and I don't even see, the thing is, I know that if I take something off a shelf in a supermarket, I know I'm stealing. The hippies back in the 60s, they go into the supermarket, take peanut butter, take a brick of cheese, something like that. The hippie said, we're liberating the peanut butter. We're liberating the peanut butter from the establishment pigs. We're liberating a brick of cheese. I know not to liberate peanut butter. Because if I would already liberate things, I'd be able to liberate a car from a used car from a new lot. That's what I would like to liberate. I know not to liberate. I know that, but this is my own field. Do you understand how the power of the rationalization here? It's my own field. What did you do? In any way, you're a bum. I'll get you a job. I'll force you to work. You understand? Lozig Nova. Hey, buddy. It's theirs. And stop thinking so much. You're going to think yourself right into trouble. Don't steal.
The whole thing belongs not even to the Ribono Shel Olam.
Yeah, right. But we don't, it's the Ribono Shel Olam's, but you're on my Ribono Shel Olam's property. Yeah, it's one Ribono Shel Olam, but it's my Ribono Shel Olam's property, right? And get off before I take out my shotgun. So because of the rationalization, the Torah says don't do it. That's what the Torah says don't do it. Okay, listen. The temptation. Remember we said yesterday, the temptation to steal is very great. The temptation for money is a very great temptation.
Well, what if we were to live in like a very rich neighborhood where no poor people pass by and it's just overgrowing? So much
what happens when it's there is a limitation, that there is a certain time limit that it puts on you when everybody's allowed into the field. The field becomes hefker. There are certain time limitations. Yeah, at certain time. There are also at certain times you keep you keep stuff in storage in case you get to the poor person. There is actually sometimes you harvest it and then you give it away manually. That is discussed in the Mishnah. It's in Tractate Peah in the Mishnais. Now the whole story of Rus on Shavuos, Boaz and Rus. Rus goes to the field to collect the leket. They're walking. There's a line as the harvester. They had that sickle. And as the harvester is collecting with the sickle, there's a line of poor people walking behind him, picking up. Now, if he drops 3 grains, they can't take it. He gets to bend down and pick up all 3. If he drops 2 grains, that's automatically off limits for him. He's got to leave for the poor people. So there's a line of poor people following the harvester. Sometimes I guess they split up and they follow each individual. But you understand, these are desperate people. If you're walking through the field looking for fallen grains, you're talking about some desperate people over here, and there's anything falls. There's a mad dash for it. That's one of the things that attracted Boaz's attention about Rus, because Boaz in the Megillah it says Boaz says, "Who's that lady over there?" So Boaz says, "Boaz, a man who's looking at women." Boaz is the Nasi, he's the head of the Sanhedrin. He's checking out the women in the field. The answer is that Boaz was so impressed by her tznius. She was eye-catchingly modest. You get the paradox over here. While everybody else jumped She bent down in a very, very dignified manner. She didn't bend down in an unsneous way. She bent down in a very dignified manner. Boy, it would be roughly the equivalent of being at Arizona State University and seeing a girl walk across the campus in a dress, in a full dress in July in Arizona State. You know, you could just imagine, you know, a girl in a full dress. That would catch the attention. He was eye-catchingly tznius, if you catch the irony. So Boaz noticed her. They were looking for the leket. She was collecting the leket in the field. That's one of these. Gifts to the poor. Okay. Take a look at Yud Tes Pasuk Yud Dalid. Every one of these is every. We'll have to continue next week a little bit on this with some of these. It says like this. Yud Dalid, Lo sekal el cheresh, do not curse a mute, somebody who cannot hear. Second line on page 660. Which obviously begs what question?
Can you curse the others?
Can you curse somebody else? The answer is you can't curse anybody, but who are you more likely to curse?
Yeah.
Somebody who can't hear, you know, you'll mutter one because the guy can't hear, you're not allowed to curse anyone. Vilifnei iver lo sitein michshol, do not put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. You should fear God ani Hashem. Now, what is that? Don't put a stumbling block in front of, I mean, what kind of jerks are we talking about over here? Hey, there's a blind guy, come and watch this. You know, you take a broomstick and catch him. I mean, you need a Torah to tell you not to do that. I mean, even in American prisons, they beat a guy up for that. You know, in America, you know, when you go to jail, they have a certain code of respect. You know, we are honorable murderers, armed robbers and rapists over here. We don't tolerate, we don't tolerate cannibals in prison, and we don't tolerate various types of molesters. You know, we have a certain limit over here. We're honorable. What are you putting in a pervert with us? You know, we're fine upstanding murderers over here. You know, and they beat the tar out of the guy. Right? It's known. There's a code. What do you think we are over here? Right? So I mean, don't trip a blind person. I mean, honestly, that's supposed to trip anybody. Don't trip a blind person. We need to be. The answer is the commentators as one. What is this really talking about? It's two areas that this is describing. Area number one, don't give bad advice intentionally. Don't give bad advice anytime, but we're talking about intentionally. One of the best pieces of advice I could give you is don't give advice if you're not qualified. And by the way, to be well-meaning doesn't mean you're qualified. To be well-meaning doesn't. I mean, if your brother isn't feeling well, you know, you want him to feel well, so you give him medical advice. The fact that you could give it, the fact that you care about him doesn't mean that you're qualified to give the advice. That applies in many areas of life. Somebody asks you, "Do you think I should marry this girl or not?" And you're really concerned about it. But who are you? Or how do you know enough? Do you know enough about life itself? Do you know anything about marriage that you can give advice? What qualifies you? Only because you want what's best for him. How do you know what's best? You haven't even determined what's best for yourself. How do you determine what's best for him? So that is in general a rule in life. You have to have qualifications. I had a guy here once at the yeshiva, had a student here at the yeshiva, whose brother-in-law advised him to leave the yeshiva and go to a different country. So I confronted the brother-in-law. I said to him, "Can I ask you a question? What are your qualifications to advise him?" He says, "Well, I'm his brother-in-law." I said, "I understand that. And you want what's best for him. Do you have any sort of experience advising people? Do you have any idea what's best for him? How do you know based on what are you making that judgment? Based on what are you making that judgment? What are your qualifications? Do you have experience advising people? Are you old enough? Do you have any sort of Torah knowledge to be able to advise them? What qualifies you? Understand? So yeah, well-meaning, great. You're probably more well-meaning than I am, but you're not qualified. So here, the Torah is taking it a step further. Don't intentionally give bad advice. Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. Your friend comes over and says, "Listen, I met this girl. Father's got a lot of money. She's the only daughter. He's 91. He's on a respirator. She's really sweet. She's really kind. She's got really great quality. You know, she's attractive. She's got all the qualifications. And she's interested in me. Do you think I should marry her?" Nah, you need a toughie. You need somebody who's going to put you, no, that's not for you. And the guy says, "Thanks a lot," and then you call the girl. As he walks away, he said, "By the way, what's her number?" That's giving intentional bad advice.
No, but I'd say no for a different reason because it sounds like he's more attracted to the money than he is to her.
Good, then you have to be qualified before you give that advice. But assuming that's not what you're not only that, in your value system, that is an important thing, and in his value system, it's an important thing. You purposely give him bad advice because you want it for your benefit. A guy says to you, what do you think of that apartment? Do you think I ought to buy that apartment? That flat? Do you think it's a good investment? And you yourself are thinking about it as an investment. So one of the things you could do, you could say to him, listen, it's in my best interest not to discuss it. That you could do. You don't have to go and shoot yourself in the foot. It's in my best interest not to discuss it. But to go and say, no, I don't think it's a good investment is a lie. It's bad advice because it is a good investment. The proof is you yourself want to invest in it. That's if they evert lositein michshol. Don't give bad advice intentionally, number one. Number two, included in this is don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person in the halachic realm. Your friend sits down in front of you and says, boy, I am really starving. And you take out a treif hamburger and put it on the table in front of him. Oh, I happen to have a McDonald's burger here. And he's starving, hungry, and he's not that righteous. And you know he's going to indulge, or there's a very good chance. You have just put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. That's the prohibition. Don't put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. It means don't cause him to stumble in what's beneficial for him advice-wise, and don't cause him to stumble halachically when you know that he's vulnerable and you create a situation. We'll continue with this in Mirza Hashem on Sunday. Okay.